different. I can tell you that. So here's what I want to do. I want to talk about uh, divorce and how difficult it is in some cultures. So what I want to do here is I want to show you what we call a genogram. A genogram is a little graph that sort of helps you to see relationships. Now, what I've done here for you now is not a perfect genogram, but it kind of describes the situation for myself and for my wife, okay? So remember, if you see a triangle on a genogram, it's a man. If you see a circle, that's a female, okay? So let me hold this up. Let me see if I can get this done right. All right, there you are. So there you can see you have grandfather and grandmother. There they are. And so they have some kids. And then you can see they had a son with a triangle, Miller, and they also had a daughter named Rose. There's the circle with the R. Then you have Miller had a son named Ned, and Ned also had a son over there named Larry. That's me. So then here's Rose over here. She much later, she got married, and she had a daughter named Linda. Now, again, this is not a perfect genogram. It's not showing all the brothers and sisters and everything. I'm just trying to give you an idea of how things change when people get married. Now, you'll notice that you got Miller and his family, Ned, and then he has a son named Larry. And then you got Rose over here years later, who has a daughter named Linda. Now, it's pretty easy to figure that Linda here is the niece of Miller, right? And that Ned would be the nephew of Rose, and so on, right? All right. Now, you will have remembered that my wife is Linda. Now, there she is there, okay? So there she is, and of course, her relationship to Ned would be what? Be a cousin, first cousin, I believe, yeah. So Linda and Ned, they are first cousins. Until one day, something happens, and all these people get together, and they decide that from grandfather on down, everybody says, hey, I know, let's set up a marriage between Larry and Linda. And then I put that. And do you see what happened there? That Larry's family had to pay Linda's family, see what it says there? $5,000. That is exactly what we had to pay for that privilege. Now, again, I know it sounds like we bought her. We did not buy her. One of the better ways I heard a gypsy boy say it was that we're not buying her, but we are paying her family for the loss of a daughter, because, a daughter in a gypsy family, man, that's a person who's going to do a lot. She's going to tell fortunes for you and all kinds of stuff. And so we're not really buying her, but we're paying you because you lost something, okay? But guess what? Grandmother, grandfather, Miller and Rose and Ned, they all conspired, but they never consulted with Larry and Linda. Because why? Because they weren't thinking about romance for Larry and Linda. Here's what they were thinking about. Let me show you. They were thinking about the social, the political, the economic, and sacred components of our culture. In other words, socially it worked because we weren't first cousins, but we're like second cousins once removed or something like that. But it was legal for us to get married. So socially it worked. Politically it was very good because you had these two families who were doing pretty well for themselves, and now they become one family. I mean, you're talking about a very strong political situation. This family could speak up on issues and be listened to. Economically, it was a good deal because Linda was known to be a good fortune teller, somebody who would make a lot of money. And sacred, I mean, people said, oh, we prayed to the elders, and they met the dead ancestors. And they said, oh, yes, we're all for this. Even the dead ancestors like this union. I'm not making this up. All right, so, oh, I forgot to show you something, though. Take a look at this. The part that I really love, that I didn't think about too much, is here you had these relationships. You had Ned and Linda. There they are. First cousins, right? Now all of a sudden, because Linda marries Larry, now Ned becomes Linda's father-in-law. And now, instead of she becoming Aunt Rose, now she is the in-laws. Miller is now sort of like her, instead of her uncle, Linda had an uncle, oops, Linda had an uncle named Miller, but now he's grandpa because he's my grandpa. But do you see how many things changed because of a marriage? And I guess that's the main point I want to make to you. But it's not just in our situation, it's every single situation on the planet. When people get married, things are changing. And I will say this too, when people divorce, things are changing. All right. So we know that, as I said, divorce in some cultures is easy. As with the case of our son, it really wasn't too difficult for them. I didn't like the fact that, we lost some friends over it, some very, very wonderful people. I mean, it's not like we don't like each other, we do, but, it's not the same. Um, Now, the way people approach divorce in ethnic minorities, as I said, with us, it was almost impossible, unless there was a really good reason, unless I was beating on her or something really bad, they just wouldn't really approve it. In India, once children come, that's it. I mean, they just tell you, put aside your differences. We've got to think about the children now. That's it. Now, the Hopi Indians in Arizona, they have a totally different way of looking at it. The woman can basically get the guy's belongings, put them out by the door, and say, we're done. And that's a divorce. Uh, Now, what I think is funny, as I said, everything is so different, except, here's the funny part, the common reasons for divorce hardly ever differ. Now, take a guess. What would be number one, the number one reason for a split up? Isn't it easy to figure? In every culture that we've studied, we found out infidelity was number one. Not hard to figure. And that's the strange thing. This is the thing I mean about anthropology. We find all these differences, but then you get down to the core of things and say, oh, no difference at all. And that's the part I love about anthropology, because we do stress the differences, and we should. But I love when anthropology goes deeper and finds out that a man or a woman, no matter where they are on the planet, they like it when somebody says, okay, just you and me, and I'm going to be, faithful to you. Uh, the second reason, and we see this very common, is sterility. If the woman is not able, if she's what they call barren and not able to bear children, then that could be a good reason for a lot of people. I know of a lot of cases among gypsies where, this has happened. Cruelty, pretty big, where the guy gets kind of mean. I've seen both men and women do a pretty good job on this one. Many of the couples that my wife and I know over the years, we would sit and visit with them, and they're such kind, beautiful, wonderful, loving people, except to each other. To each other, they're very cruel. To everybody else, they seem to be okay. To each other, they're cruel. And of course, then divorce is imminent. And then the last reason is desertion. I just worked with a man here recently whose wife just took the kid and just left, and there was no explanation at all. And she just said she just felt like it was time. And she didn't really accuse him of anything. She just said, I feel it's time to go. And those happen not too often, but they do happen. So as you can see, divorce across cultures is different, but the reasons, that's the thing that gets me, the reasons do not differ among us as humans. All right, now, as you know, once you get married, there's going to be family. Okay, there's going to be kids. So the most common form of family that we can find is what we call conjugal families. It's probably the kind that you were raised in, where there's a man and his wife and some kids. These are conjugal relationships. Then, in some cases, we have the man and his wife and a lot of cousins jumping in, and we call that, hope I say this right, consanguineal, where the brothers and the sisters and the cousins, and they all live together. And by the way, that was very common among gypsies for a long time, a long, long time. I think it's only been in the last 20 years that they really said, no, let's have our own houses and stuff. And And it was kind of fun back in those days, having always a lot of people in the house. And you were never lonely. I mean, it was crazy, and you'd get crazy with people sometimes, but there was no loneliness. And I think a lot of people have said to me that that has been a big problem in this individualistic culture is that, yeah, you have a lot of wonderful individual rights, but man, it does get lonely. Um, a lot of you probably grew up in what they call a nuclear family, which just has, mom and dad and and the kids and the dog. Here's the interesting things. Back in 1950, when I was born in 1953. In 1950, 60% of people around this country lived that way. Now it's down to 20%. So it's just not happening anymore. So that has a big effect on society. And when they looked at 192 cultures, they found that now in the world, the biggest model is the extended family model, where you have a man and his wife and grown kids, maybe 35, 40 years old, not married or married, and they all live under one roof. I was out west in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and the preacher got up and he said, kids are staying home longer, 30, 35 years old. But he said, but on the one hand, it's hard to blame them when a no bedroom studio apartment costs $2,800 a month. I mean, that's San Francisco area. So, I mean, there's a lot of crazy reasons why extended families are coming back, and it's really not a move in the bad direction as far as I'm concerned. All right, so here we've talked about marriage across cultures. We've talked about it being a social institution. We've talked about choice of spouse. We've even talked about a uh, uh, case study and Linda and me. And I hope you can see it is a game changer. It's a society changer. It is a world changer. Okay. One last thing I want to say to you today is this: is I know that going to school is tough, and I know that juggling and all that sort of thing. But I do hope you'll keep in mind something that a man named John Gardner and Joe, our resident writer, you'll appreciate this. John Gardner uh, taught writing for years and years, great, great novelist. And he said, a university education, like nothing else, provides a person with objectivity, fair mindedness, and the pursuit of legitimate evaluation. Aren't you tired of just being around people saying, "Oh, I think this, I think that. Oh no, it's this. Oh, that's bad." Blah, blah, blah. Aren't you tired of it? Don't you want to be around people who are objective, who have a sense of fairness and can listen and can legitimately pursue a topic and know, I mean, step by step, know why something is either important or not important, whether it's valuable or not valuable. I'm not saying it's wrong to just spout out your opinions once in a while, but what kind of a person are you going to, what kind of a world are we going to have? Please keep it in mind that what you're doing, you're growing in objectivity, you're growing in fair mindedness, and you are learning the legitimate steps on how to evaluate an idea, which is pretty powerful stuff in our world today. I hope that you've enjoyed the lecture. Please check the announcement. It's got the rest of the assignment for you. I'll see you on November the 6th.